Hi everyone, I am Noman Bashir from University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm here to talk about our work on resource overcommitment in data centers. This work was done while I was working as a student researcher at Google. Our work focuses on overcommitment, but before I go into the details of it, I would like to briefly describe the kind of system architecture that our work targets. The architecture I am going to describe uses the terminology of Google's Borg scheduler. This is because our work is deployed inside Borg, but the general architecture is used by many resource management platforms such as Kubernetes and Mesos. In Borg, a cell refers to a group of machines that are managed by a centralized entity called Borg master. Various applications submit tasks to the Borg master. In our case, these applications are Google services such as YouTube and Gmail, plus the workload submitted by the internal users. Each task that comes to the Borg has a defined limit on the amount of resources it will use. The limit on resources can be set by the user, an application, or an entity outside Borg. Once the tasks arrive, Borg masters schedules them onto the machine. There are two steps to the scheduling process. First step is to find the right bins that can fit the task. To do that, Borg master will select machines that have the right hardware and permissions among other factors. Also, it will talk to Borglets running on each machine to ask for the available capacity on per machine basis. Once it has selected the set of machines, it then uses a bin packing algorithm to pack the selected bins with tasks. Please note that without overcommitment, the sum of allocated resources to the tasks on a given machine is less than the physical capacity of the machine. Let's take a step back and see what does overcommitment mean in this context. We say that a machine is overcommitted when sum of the allocated resources to the tasks is greater than the machine's physical capacity. This is a commonly used solution to increase the resource utilization and decrease the overall cost for a data center. It is used by many data center schedulers, such as our very own resource scheduler, Borg. Overcommitment is also supported by many cloud resource management platforms, such as Kubernetes, GCP, and vSphere. Before talking about our work, I would like to briefly discuss when is the overcommitment possible and where does the opportunity to overcommitment comes from. Overcommitment of resources is done when all the physical resources on a given machine have been allocated, but the resource utilization is still under 100%. And the opportunity to overcommitment comes from the difference between the physical capacity of the machine and its utilization level. There are two factors that contribute to this difference. First is the usage to limit gap. Most of the users request resources based on the expected peak demand for the resources, which hardly if ever occurs. In this graph, we plot the CDF of future task level peak usage normalized to the allocated resources. As a result, the shaded area represents the resources that have been allocated but will never be used even at peak times. There are internal systems like Autopilot that are used to reduce this gap. The second effect is the pooling effect. It represents the statistical multiplexing of peak. In simple words, the peak usage of all the tasks does not coincide in time. In this graph, we plot the CDF of machine level peak, and the shaded area represents the unused resources at the machine level. We can see that the machine level peak is significantly less than the sum of task level peaks that we see in the other graph. The green shaded area is the total opportunity to overcome it. And even if a perfect autopilot system removes the first opportunity, the statistical multiplexing still provides significant opportunity for overcommitment. Given that the resources are available to be overcommitted, the next question is how much should we overcommit? Most of the algorithms that are in use today by the resource management platforms overcommit by a fixed margin. For example, Borg's default algorithm overcommits by a fixed overcommitment factor. Such algorithms ignore the resource usage of the machine, and as a result, they are risky for some machines and are wasteful on others. Let's take a look at how the level of overcommitment impacts the allocation, resource wastage, and performance. If we do not overcommit, our allocations are less than or equal to the capacity, and the usage would also be less than the capacity. Therefore, all the resources get to use the resource, all the tasks get to use the resources that they are allocated, and they do not face any resource contention or performance degradation. If we overcommit resources by a small margin, there is a low chance of performance degradation. However, we may still be wasting resources that are unused at the same time. Finally, if we overcommit by a significant margin, we get a lot of savings, but there is a very high chance that the resource usage would reach 100%. And as a result, some of the tasks may get throttled or get evicted. The right level of overcommitment lies somewhere on this line. At this overcommitment level, there will be no evictions or degradation because resource usage will never exceed 100%. As a result, you will get the maximum savings while being safe. Now that we know our system architecture and what overcommitment means, let's see where does the problem of finding the right overcommitment level fits into this setup. If you remember from slide 1, there are two steps to scheduling tasks: finding the right bins and packing the tasks to the bins. In this setup, finding the right level of overcommitment is basically the task of estimating free capacity on a machine. This is because the free capacity determines how many resources are available for overcommitment. And given this formulation of overcommitment problem, our work is complementary and orthogonal to the scheduling problem in data centers. And while solving this problem of finding the right overcommitment level, we make three key contributions. First, we formalize the overcommitment problem using first principles. Second, we propose a general methodology for designing and evaluating overcommit policies. And finally, we provide tools that enable people to follow the same methodology and devise their own overcommitment policies for their production environment. Finding free capacity is a system problem in general. For example, in Vogue, scheduler polls the machine for the available capacity. However, if we look closely, it's a per machine peak prediction problem. Let's consider a very simple example to illustrate this point. Let's assume there is a single machine and one task is running on it. The task has been allocated all the available resources on the machine, and at some point in time, the scheduler asks the machine for the available capacity. If we estimate free capacity based on the allocations, we may end up wasting resources if the task never uses all of its allocations. And if we estimate it based on the current usage, we may not have this much capacity later on if task usage increases. However, if we know the peak usage of the current task in the future, we can confidently advertise the free capacity to the scheduler. An algorithm that uses the future knowledge and provides available capacity. We call this algorithm peak oracle. It is the safest algorithm that provides us the most saving while using future knowledge. However, since peak oracle uses future knowledge, it cannot be implemented in practice. Given the peak oracle, the task of finding the future peak becomes a supervised learning problem. This formulation allows us to use prior work on developing predictive models. However, developing practical peak predictors is only our secondary contribution. Therefore, we present a few very simple and lightweight predictors in our paper. They either take some percentile of past usage or mean plus some standard deviation. While these predictors perform well, as you will see in evaluation section, there is a significant room for improvement still. So by reducing the overcommitment problem to a peak prediction problem, we have given us the power of running different scenarios in offline simulation to design, tune, and evaluate a practical peak predictor. This allows us to quickly iterate through multiple designs without conducting any risky and time-consuming experiments in production. I will briefly describe our simulation setup next. At time t is equal to 0, we use a given practical peak predictor to predict the peak using prior data. At the same time, we use peak oracle algorithm to get the true peak in the future. We then compare the predicted peak with the true peak to see how a practical peak predictor performs. We release our simulator as an open source software that allows anyone to design and evaluate their own predictors. And the standardized interface implemented by our simulator enables very easy integration into the Borg or Kubernetes-like platform later on. With the simulator in place, we need to look into the metrics that quantify a predictor's performance in simulation. The traditional metrics such as MAE, MSE, and MAPE are not applicable here because over, under, and exact predictions have different impact on our system. For example, it is fine if the predicted peak is higher than the true peak. Our system will overcommit less, have low savings, but there will be no performance degradation. Exact predictions are, of course, ideal, as they give the most savings while being safe. And finally, under predicting the peak is dangerous for the system due to the possibility of performance degradation and task evictions. We summarize these three scenarios into two categories: Oracle violation or no Oracle violation. And we measure the performance of a predictor using violation rate, which is the ratio of number of Oracle violations and the total time increase and the total time instances on per machine basis. The ideal violation rate is of course zero. However, it is impossible to achieve that in practice. The level of acceptable violation rate is dependent on the SLOs defined for the task. Violation rate is a simulation metric and it quantifies a system's a predictor's performance in simulation. However, in production, the quality of service is measured using different metrics. Since in this work, we overcommit only CPU resources, CPU scheduling latency is the metric of choice for the latency sensitive serving tasks that we focus in this work. We conducted an experiment to quantify the relationship between violation rate and CPU scheduling latency. This graph shows that as the violation rate increases, the CPU scheduling latency increases as well. This shows that our metric of choice in simulation is representative of a predictor's performance in production. We evaluate our prediction policies in simulation as well as production. In simulation, we use the latest version of Google's publicly available cluster trace, and we use our simulation to tune the parameters for individual predictors as well as compare different peak predictors. We deployed our best performing predictor from simulation on several thousand machines in data centers that run Google's serving workload. In production, we compare our approach to Google's default overcommitment policy used by Borg in an A/B experiment. In simulation, we use three metrics. First one is the violation rate that we have discussed previously. Violation severity is the second metric, and it tells us how severe the violation is when it happens. And finally, saving ratio tells us how much additional capacity we advertise as a result of overcommitment. In production environment, we use all the metrics mentioned for simulation as well as some additional metrics such as how much more workload is being allocated to the machines, how much actual workload has increased, and finally, how do these policies affect the performance. I will next go through an example to illustrate how to tune a predictor using our simulator. I am taking N sigma predictor as an example. This predictor takes the mean usage of tasks and adds a multiple of standard deviation to it to predict the peak. It is configured using various parameters such as the value of the multiple among other factors. While other parameters are significant, the value of n has the most impact. And therefore we look at the per machine violation rate and savings at different values of n. There is a performance versus saving trade-off. As the value of n increases, performance improves because the violation rate goes down, but the savings also decrease. As a result, we pick the value of n that strikes a good balance between the two opposing effects. The next set of results show how we use the simulator to select the best performing predictor after we have tuned each of them individually. The left graph shows the CDF of per machine violation rate for various peak predictors, while the right one shows the savings. For the violation graph, the curves on the left are better. For the savings graph, the curve on the right are better. Let's take a look at one predictor as an example. RC-like predictor gives more savings but have poor performance. On the other hand, max predictor strikes a good balance between savings and performance, and therefore this is uh, the predictor of choice for our production environment. So we selected the max predictor in simulation and deployed it into the production. This graph shows how much free capacity the machines in the experiment group advertise. In these graphs, the curves on the right are better. Machines in the experiment group advertise more capacity. Since they advertise more free capacity, they are allocated more workload as shown in this graph. And finally, the increase in workload allocations leads to an increase in the actual workload on these machines. So we saw that the experiment group, which deploys our max predictor, have an increased workload, so which means increased savings. We next compare the performance in terms of violation rate and CPU scheduling latency for the experiment and the control group to see if the increased overcommitment has any impact on the performance. This graph shows the per machine violation rate, and this graph shows the CPU scheduling latency. And the curves on the left are better. There are two key takeaways from these results. First one is that the production results match the simulation in two ways. First, the per machine violation rate curves that we observe in this graph are very similar to the per machine violation rate curves that we saw in the simulation for the max predictor. And secondly, the per machine violation rate and CPU scheduling latency have very similar profiles. So our metric of choice for simulation and production are consistent. The second takeaway is that the experiment group shows better performance than the control group, despite the fact that we are overcommitting more and we have more savings. So it seems counterintuitive that while the workload increased, performance also improved. It should have gone down. But to investigate this problem, we looked at the utilization levels of the machine. The first graph shows the average utilization level for the machine, while the second graph shows the 99th percentile utilization levels. A curve on the right indicates high utilization. We can see that the experiment group has higher utilization on average, but its utilization is low at 99th percentile. So this low utilization at 99th percentile leads to better performance. This is because our policies set the overcommitment level on per machine basis, which means when utilization levels are high, machines are overcommitted less and vice versa. And to conclude the talk, I will outline a few key takeaways. First, we proposed a general methodology for designing and evaluating overcommitment policies. We established a correlation between simulation results and performance in production and demonstrated that our simple peak predictors outperform state of the art. There are quite a few future research directions for this work. There is a significant room for improvement in our practical peak predictors, and we are yet to test more sophisticated but lightweight machine learning algorithms. If you want to use our simulator to design and evaluate your own predictors, I have provided the links for code, data, and documentation. And if you need any help, feel free to contact me at my email.